Hello and welcome to a special podcast for the eShopperReviews 2021 Game Awards. I'm Jen Ip.
And I'm Jake McNeil.
And this week we'll be revealing the finalists and winners for awards in various categories. Today for day 4 of the awards, we will be looking at genre awards for games on the Nintendo Switch in 2021, starting with Best Platformer.
To clarify, this is going to focus on games that are not Metroidvanias and games that I feel wouldn't be better suited for a more action-focused category. Those will be listed elsewhere. The finalists for this award are Super Magbot, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, Kaze and the Wild Masks, Cyberhook, Super Cable Boy, and the winner is Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury.
Oh my goodness, this game has gotten so many different awards.
Well, it deserves it. It is an excellent platformer, regardless of which way you cut it. If you include the content that's from the original release, the Super Mario 3D World content, which is much improved here, it is just all around a great platformer. But then you throw in the Bowser's Fury stuff, which takes that in a whole new direction and explores Mario games in a whole new way that hasn't been done before, with a more open world. I think this is a phenomenal platformer and definitely deserving of this.
Best Arcade/Party Game, which is new for 2021.
I'm kind of surprised we didn't have this award before, but there were a lot of games that felt better suited to this category than some of the other categories, so seemed like a good one to add this year.
Mm-hmm.
The finalists for this category are Super Bomberman R Online, Stacks on Stacks on Stacks, WarioWare Get It Together, Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, and the winner for Best Arcade/Party Game is Fly Together.
Okay.
Again, we've talked about this in a previous podcast, but the basic idea is if you're looking for a game to add to your party game roster, this is perfect. It has great co-op, it has great competitive play, it's simple and easy to pick up, so just about anyone can get into it. It takes a classic game concept and expands it to include a lot of good multiplayer and just does it all very, very well.
Best Action Game.
The finalists for this category are Clone Drone in the Danger Zone, Olija, Savage Halloween, Astro Aqua Kitty, Cyber Shadow, and the winner is Boomerang X. The feeling of motion that you get in this game as you zip around and kill enemies is truly fantastic, and when I'm just looking for a game for pure action in 2021, I strain to think of anything that beats this out. It's just an all-around great action game.
New for 2021 is Best Metroidvania.
There were so many good Metroidvanias this year, and I feel like a lot of them went overlooked and really shouldn't have been. Out of all of the awards, I get the feeling this is the one that will probably surprise and maybe upset the most people because you'll see. The finalists for this category are Blaster Master 03, Ascalon Tears of the Earth, Ender Lilies Quietus of the Nights, Metroid Dread, and the winner for Best Metroidvania is Axiom Verge 2.
What?
I feel like a lot of people are probably going to be surprised or maybe a bit disappointed that I did not name Metroid Dread as the winner in this category, but I feel like Axiom Verge 2 did a lot of things very right. And Metroid Dread, while I still very much like it, I think it is an excellent game, definitely one of the better games to come out this year on Nintendo Switch. It did a few things that frustrated me, especially things that work poorly within the context of a Metroidvania. I would say one of the key components of a Metroidvania is exploration. You want to encourage exploration, and you want to kind of tie everything together. So as you're exploring areas, you kind of double back on areas you've already been to and have a good opportunity to explore them again in a new light now that you've gotten new abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Metroid Dread, I feel like, does this kind of poorly for a couple reasons. First of all, the Emmy enemies make for entire sections of the game where you are encouraged not to explore them because you have this enemy constantly hunting you that you can't fight off. But then, once you get the ability to eliminate these enemies, you have this entire section of the world where it's mostly empty because they designed it so there isn't too much to explore in there, because why would you be exploring when you're being actively hunted?
True.
And this really runs counter to a Metroidvania to have these huge chunks of territory where you're either actively not wanting to explore them or actively discouraged from exploring them. And then another element that kind of makes this worse as far as a Metroidvania goes is that all of the separate areas of the world in this game are disconnected via elevators and teleporters. And I feel like this, again, interferes with that interconnectedness that you kind of look for in a Metroidvania. And while some of the best games in the genre, in fact, some of the best games in the Metroid series, have also had elevators, it hasn't been exclusively that. You still have a chance of you're exploring one area and suddenly break into another area you didn't even realize you were doing it. And I feel like this game loses something in that. But we're not talking about why Metroid Dread didn't win this. We're talking about why Axiom Verge 2 did. And I'll start by saying it is jaw-dropping. It is incredible that this is the work of one individual. One person designed all of the gameplay, all of the art assets, composed the music. Virtually everything in this game comes down to the creative work of one individual. But it's not just that. It's also really well done, and it's really creative and totally departs from what we might have expected from the first Axiom Verge. I really liked the first Axiom Verge, but I didn't outright love it. It didn't grab me in the way that some of the best Metroidvanias did, and I feel like Axiom Verge 2 really outshines it in numerous ways, and it's super creative. So, to give you an idea, enemies don't deal damage on impact. They have to be actively attacking you, which means it can be a very vital strategy to just haul your butt through an area without stopping and hope that enemies don't get the time to attack you. Just run straight through them. The same thing is true for bosses, where you don't even need to fight the bosses in the game. You're encouraged to do so because you get upgrades and bonuses for defeating them. But if you find a particularly difficult boss, you can just run past them and then double back to them if you want to defeat them later when you've got better equipment. It has a drone that you control, which takes place in kind of a separate world that's transposed onto the world that your main character is exploring, which makes for a wholly different kind of gameplay that still fits well within the gameplay of the main game and allows you to kind of transfer back and forth between the two. The game is visually very nice. It has a great soundtrack, and just all around, I think that it does a great job with the Metroidvania formula and really does some inventive stuff with it. So I have no problem saying, yes, I very much like Metroid Dread. Axiom Verge 2 is my choice for Best Metroidvania this year.
Alright, next up is Best Action RPG.
I've split up the RPG and Action RPG categories this year because we actually got plenty good examples of both. So this is just the action side of that equation. Also, the things that many people refer to as action adventures. If it has character progression and building elements, if there's some sort of statistics or items or equipment or whatever, but if the gameplay itself is more action-based and not necessarily menu-focused, it's an action RPG as far as I'm concerned. The finalists for this category are Ys 9 Monstrum Nox, Subnautica Below Zero, Eastward, Persona 5 Strikers, Unsighted, and the winner for Best Action RPG is Monster Hunter Rise.
Yay!
I know, you like this game too.
I do.
No big surprise. She and I were literally just playing this within the last hour or so.
Mm-hmm.
As an action RPG, Monster Hunter Rise has an excellent gameplay loop of you go in, you fight the big bad monster, you collect all the fun parts from them, you build better gear for yourself to fight even bigger, badder monsters. It's very simple in that gameplay loop, but it works very well because the variety of monsters, the feeling of progression in the game, all of these elements are handled extremely well. And I know I've been critical of Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. I feel was overrated and had all sorts of problems. And I feel like Monster Hunter Rise, no pun intended, rises well above that to become just an incredibly good game. Definitely my pick for Best Action RPG this year.
Best RPG.
Like I said, this is games with more of a focus on menu-based combat, so it's more intellectual, or so the idea goes. The finalists for Best RPG are Voice of Cards, The Isle Dragon Roars, Loop Hero, Disgaea 6, Defiance of Destiny, Atelier Ryza 2, Lost Legends and the Secret Fairy, Bravely Default 2, and the winner for Best RPG goes to Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Ah.
I liked the earlier games in the Shin Megami Tensei series. In particular, I thought 3 was an excellent one, and I reviewed the remake of that, or the re-release of that, earlier in the year. But Shin Megami Tensei 5, I feel, really does a good job of streamlining what the series does well, and packaging it together in this really compelling gameplay where you're constantly trying to grab new monsters to upgrade your current monsters with by combining them together and try to make the ultimate team. Again, it'll sound a little bit like Pokemon because there are some elements that are similar, but Shin Megami Tensei 5 does things very differently in a very weird and interesting world, and it's just a ton of fun to play. This game is super challenging, so it's not going to be for everyone, but for me personally, this was a game where I could play it for hours and hours on end and still find it extremely enjoyable.
All right. Next up is Best Strategy Game / Simulation.
I don't know that there's too much that I can say about this genre, so I'll just hop right into it. The finalists for this particular award are Crying Suns, Fantasy General 2 Invasion, Loop Hero, Islanders, and the winner for Best Strategy Game / Simulation is Disgaea 6 Defiance of Destiny.
Really?
This game, I don't think I like it quite as much as I like Disgaea 5, but I still think it's pretty good. However, I absolutely admire the risks that they took to make this into something truly unique and different, even within the series. This game takes what is already a really good strategy RPG formula, kind of a tactics-style strategy RPG, and they add some elements that don't quite work, but the thing that they add that really changes this and makes it completely refreshing is that they add an ability to create what's called DI, or demonic intelligence, where you can actively program macros for all of your characters to have them automatically approach combat however you want, and then you can just set the controller down and forget it for hours on end.
As an idle game.
And it becomes an idle game. And while I know that this is not going to be for everyone, some people just hate the idea of an idle game, I feel like Disgaea 6 actually combines these two genres really well in a way that elevates both genres. That's the kind of creativity I could not ignore, and on top of that, the game itself is a lot of fun. Again, I still prefer Disgaea 5, but this one is well worth playing as well.
Next is Best Graphic Adventure / Visual Novel.
Again, not sure that there's too much I can say about this category, so I'll just get right to the finalists as it is.
Mm-hmm.
So the finalists for this category are Overboard, Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, Astrologaster, Lacuna, Disco Elysium The Final Cut, and the winner for Best Graphic Adventure or Visual Novel is The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles.
Not surprised at all.
Well, you were there when I played this game,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you were just as impressed as I was. It does all the things that this series does well, and it elevates them with a great presentation. The characters are all excellent, and that was something I was kind of worried about with this one, because it's taking the series to a new time period with completely different characters, although a lot of them are very familiar characters because they're similar to the ones in the rest of the series. But despite this, it still feels refreshing and different, and they add in some new elements that really change this up. There's the jury trial stuff, which honestly doesn't work out to be too much different than the regular gameplay. But then they add these course correction elements where you have this ridiculous character, Herlock Sholmes, who is making completely wrong deductions about things. And you need to go in and observe the environment and point out why his deductions are wrong. And so this keeps the series from just resting on its laurels. But even if it had, it's already one of the best in the genre, and I feel like these extra steps take it even farther to be the best that there is on the Nintendo Switch in 2021 as far as visual novels and graphic adventures, which you can honestly kind of consider this to be a little of both.
Best puzzle game.
Again, not sure that there's too much I need to say to introduce this category, so I'll get right to it. The finalists for Best Puzzle Game are New Pokemon Snap, Pixel Puzzle and Watch Collection, A Monster's Expedition, Hexseed, Islanders, and the winner for Best Puzzle Game is Tetris Effect Connected. Again, I feel a lot of the things that I said about this when this game won the Best Game for Kids and Casual Players still applies here. This game is universal. Just about anyone can enjoy Tetris. But beyond this just being, hey, Tetris is great, everybody loves it, this is arguably the best version of Tetris ever made. This is a beautiful, gorgeous game, wonderful soundtrack, tons of different ways to play it, different game options. It has challenge modes, it has stuff that makes things easier for players who want an easy ride, it has great multiplayer stuff. Anything that you can get right with a Tetris game, I feel like this game does absolutely right, and I could not go without recognizing what an ideal puzzle game this is this year.
Best card game, new for 2021.
I added this category this year because I've reviewed a lot of card games this year. And a lot of them were not so great, but I actually reviewed quite a lot of really good ones. And I didn't want them clogging up the strategy award or the puzzle award because they're really kind of their own thing. These are the finalists for this award: Fancy Solitaire, Signs of the Sojourner, Shadowverse Champions Battle, Griftlands, and the winner for Best Card Game goes to The Solitaire Conspiracy. The Solitaire Conspiracy, I feel like a lot of people overlook this game, and they really shouldn't, because it combines a lot of elements really well into a game that at its core is really just a game of solitaire, but it's a good game of solitaire. It has good mechanics, it's unique, it's not like the traditional Klondike solitaire, it has its own way of doing things. But it builds on this with this great presentation where all of the cards represent members of your team in kind of this spies and hackers sort of high-tech espionage thing. And this is all built into this story where everything is this high-stakes game of trying to get to the goal before the enemy realizes you're there, that kind of thing. And in the end, again, it's all just simple solitaire. But the way that they build it into something more really makes this game something special.
Best driving/racing game.
I didn't feel like there were terribly a lot of truly great racing games on Nintendo Switch this last year, but there were a few that were in really close competition for winning this one. 3 out of the 4 of these games that I'm about to talk about were pretty much tied for first place, and one only slightly edged out to become the winner. The finalists in this category are MotoGP 21, Hot Wheels Unleashed, Rush Rally Origins, and the winner for Best Driving or Racing Game is Cruisin' Blast. Now, like I said, 3 of these games were super close. Cruisin' Blast, Rush Rally Origins, and Hot Wheels Unleashed are all really, really good driving games, but each of them also has a really significant flaw or flaws to them that kind of drag it down. So I had to kind of weigh them and feel out just which of these felt to me like it was the best of the bunch. I will say Rush Rally Origins is a beautiful top-down driving game that is quite possibly the best top-down driving game I've ever played. It is really excellent, and for a budget game, it is a must-have if you like games like this. But I have to knock it for not having any kind of multiplayer, and I feel like any good driving game, you really want it to have a good multiplayer, and it's frustrating that this lacks that. Hot Wheels Unleashed is an all-around good racing game. It has some microtransaction issues. They're not very significant, but they're there. And it has some problems with the core feature of the stage builder, which is not as easy to use as you'd like it to be, especially for a game that, at least theoretically, is for kids. But just all around, it's a decent racing game. However, I had to ultimately decide that this one went to Cruisin' Blast, despite that it has problems with severe rubber banding and highly scripted events that make it feel like you're less an active participant in a race and more like you are more of a passive participant in a roller coaster. But man, what a roller coaster ride it is. And ultimately I chose Cruisin' Blast because out of all the racing games I played this year, none of them filled me with a sense of joy the same way that Cruisin' Blast did.
Best sports game.
The finalists in this category are Golf Club Wasteland, Knockout City, Mario Golf Super Rush, and the winner is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2.
Not surprised.
If I'm perfectly honest, this category could just as easily have been called Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and all the rest. Because, if I'm honest with myself, none of the other games that I just named come anywhere close to being as good as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 are. That's not to say they're not good. All of them are good in their own way. But Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 is just an excellent port of a great game, and it fills a niche that the Nintendo Switch has needed filled since it launched. Up until this game released, it had yet to get a truly great extreme sports game, a skateboarding or snowboarding, something like that. And so in a way, it's kind of fitting that now that it's finally gotten one that is truly worth owning on Nintendo Switch, it is a truly great extreme sports game.
Last one, which is new for 2021, is Best Miscellaneous Game.
This is a category for games that, while they might have edged into other categories, they're really kind of their own thing. And I felt like that deserved to be recognized as well. So the finalists in this category are Umurangi Generation, Everhood, Sky Children of the Light, Rain on Your Parade, Loop Hero, and the winner is New Pokemon Snap. Now, I listed this game in the puzzle category because when you are going through the levels, taking the right photograph is often kind of a puzzle in and of itself. You're trying to figure out how to get the Pokemon where you want them to be or what you want them to be doing. But that's kind of the mechanics of the gameplay. It's not really what I feel makes this game truly special. And what that is it's kind of an exploration of the Pokemon world in a way that most Pokemon games don't do. This is kind of the best that I've seen when it comes to really making you feel like you're in that world and seeing these creatures in their natural environment. And there's no experience that tops that when it comes to something truly unique in its own on Nintendo Switch in 2021, I feel.
All right, well, that's it for day 4. Tune in for the very last day of Game Awards, where we talk about the highest honors.
Indeed. See you then.
Bye!